We actually have the opportunity to potentially grow faster by opening up our portfolio and looking at additional asset classes that can provide not just safety, not just long-term liquidity, but growth, and that tax-free kind of growth. Hi, folks. This is Colin Richards, and we are continuing a little mini series on where do I put my cash. It's something that a lot of people have suddenly discovered they've got more of maybe than usual. Maybe they were concerned about upcoming events, elections, market volatility. And I'm seeing a lot of cash when I sit down and meet with folks just like you every single day to discuss how to build a plan for financial independence. And what we want to do is build a plan that is balanced, that is going to allow you to achieve financial independence without an overemphasis on safety, but not shorting safety, okay? So cash is about safety, right? And in our first segment, we talked about the purpose of cash. It's part of what we call an emergency or a short-term reserve. Emergencies can happen. We might have to replace a water heater, and boy, have those gotten expensive. Or we might have a nice thing planned, like a vacation. But whatever, we don't want to rely on debt like credit cards or home equity to finance short-term things. That is a mistake, and it's something I often see with the young that unfortunately I still see among older folks who get concerned. And as a Christian, we know God will provide all of our needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. So we don't need to turn to debt when something comes up. But we should plan. A prudent man foresees the evil and is warned. And so we have the ability to plan ahead and to budget wisely and to set aside cash. And in our last segment, I recommended at least 6 months of your expense budget. So take a look at what it costs, get about 6 months. And that money needs to be put somewhere safe. It needs to be liquid, and it needs to be potentially growing just a little bit, getting basic interest. You say, but I want it all. I want it all, Colin. I want safety, liquidity, tons of growth. Doesn't exist. Right now, we got a little window of opportunity with some higher interest rates, giving you a little bit of percentage points that we haven't seen in a long time, but that's going to go away, right? So usually you get 2 out of 3. And so we want those two, safety and liquidity, and a compromise on growth. In other parts of our portfolio, if we're talking about the foundation right now, in other parts of our portfolio, like the walls and the roof, we're going to talk about liquid investments that maybe carry risk. So we're going to compromise in other ways. But right now, don't compromise on safety. Don't compromise on liquidity. So that brings us to our sources, our tools that we have. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the bank, right? What I want you to do is I want you to learn to diversify your cash amongst multiple banks. Now, no problem if you've got one bank and you're just building up a cash reserve and you want to put it in one bank. That's no problem at all. But some of you have businesses, or maybe some of you have set aside a little bit more cash. Again, we're not wanting to go overboard, but you've set aside a little bit more cash and it hasn't been invested, or maybe it's waiting for an upcoming move. Like maybe you sold your house and you've got some proceeds and you're going to buy a new one, or you're looking at some land, or maybe a pretty good amount for a vehicle. Whatever that is, sometimes if that number starts to get pretty big, you might want to take a look at multiple banks, and especially businesses. Businesses, you just need to do this if you keep a cash reserve, which is prudent. Businesses must keep cash reserves. You say, Colin, I operate up against the wall. Then I would be happy to help you, because one of the important things about businesses is the old adage, he who runs out of cash loses, right? Because eventually there is a limit to how much credit you can or should have. And so as a business, if you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur or you have a larger business, maybe a family business, think about multiple banks. We utilize in excess of 4 banks for cash right now. And where did this come from? Well, we've learned, right, that there is a limit to safety. We have things like the FDIC, but we need to take a look at the difficulties that would arise if a bank failed for you. It could take a while to get your money. the point of the emergency fund is for it to be readily available. You say, Colin, is it okay for me to just stash some in the safe? Sure, but we'd like to get a little bit of interest. So short-term savings right now are paying very well. Again, you can get online accounts, short-term CDs, so you don't pay a significant penalty if you need to get that out, and money markets. Right now, I don't see a lot of reason, unless you're just scratching for an extra interest point, to go to CDs, because money markets are paying out very well. Short-term savings are paying out very well. You just got to shop around and find it. And so that's the emergency fund. Now, there are other places, if you start to get a little bit more cash, that you may want to further diversify, that are going to allow you to get some growth and still have safety, right? We're not yet into an at-risk discussion. Are you going to have assets or cash or investments at risk? Well, in a balanced portfolio, yes, but you've got to have a managed risk there. That's why we build you a plan. And in addition to emergency funds, we're going to have a growing reserve, okay? But you can have a growing reserve where you give up a little bit of upfront liquidity in exchange for long-term liquidity, growth, safety, and by the way, tax-free growth. So these are the same strategies I implement in my business and in my life to go beyond just the bank account. If you're storing big amounts of money in the bank or CDs, you're actually missing out on a couple things. All of that CD interest is taxable to you immediately. All of the savings, all of that money market interest is taxable to you. And we actually have the opportunity to potentially grow faster by opening up our portfolio and looking at additional asset classes that can provide not just safety, not just long-term liquidity, but growth, and that tax-free kind of growth. And I'm going to talk about this more in our next segment, but let me just introduce the concept to you. Would it surprise you to know that very sophisticated, highly compensated people are utilizing this strategy right now to take some of their cash and put it into a kind of an often misunderstood financial bucket? It's called cash value life insurance. Now, you're not going to hear me talk about that a ton, because honestly, I get some people that talk to me and that's all they want to talk about. They want to put all their money there because it just sounds so great, but that's not a balanced approach. And again, there's always risks, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But cash value life insurance offers the opportunity to provide safety, to provide significant growth beyond what we typically see in savings, CDs, money markets, and to provide long-term liquidity, which I can teach you how to do. Not so much short-term. So this is not my little short-term 3 to 6 months. This is a year down the road typically that we can then access our money. And we do this at Lord & Richards. And we're one of the few that design it this way. And over the top of all of this is tax-free growth and accumulation. So if you've got potential tax difficulties in your personal wealth, or if you've got a business, then we want to talk to you, because at Lord & Richards, we are pioneering an approach that almost nobody has heard of. I have been shocked at how few people have heard of this. And no, I'm not just talking about life insurance in general. I'm talking about a way to put this together in a way that has huge benefits. So stay tuned for our next segment, where we're going to talk about yet another tool, an asset class for you to put your cash. But in the meantime, I'd like you to get a jump start on your plan for financial independence. I'd love for you to connect with our team, a wonderful, gifted group of compassionate advisors who love talking to people just like you. And hundreds of people are joining Lord & Richards every single year. And we want you to be one of those who benefit. It just takes a simple phone call.